gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting excerpt of the Scouser and the Scot. First thing you'll notice tonight is that there's no Scouser, there's just me. Unfortunately, Ian's had an operation and he's not fit yet to be able to do this, so it's just me and our special guest tonight. Now, this guy probably won't need an introduction to most people. He's well known within the industry. He's a guy that I find personally has a different way of doing things, and I love it. I love his music because, again, it's something different. So can I introduce to you amazing Matt Jones from the band Twisted Illusion. Hi, Matt. You all right, bro?
Thanks for that introduction. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. So as we've discussed before, this is about sharing what your experiences and what your knowledge is and your thoughts with people that are maybe new to music or new to bands, it's new bands, etc. So that's pretty much what this is going to be all about, rather than getting down into the nitty-gritty of TI as such. Obviously, there's a big part of TI in because that's your experience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But in the first instance, can you give us an insight into how your interest in music first began? Why, what it was about music that got you hooked, and who basically hooked you?
It was basically, like, I'm sure everyone has this, but it was one particular moment for me in high school. Well, two particular moments, rather. There was the moment that got me into listening to music, and then a moment that got me into being a musician. I think they were two very distinct, different things. Firstly was me hearing American Idiot by Green Day. That was like my explosion into listening to music. That was the album. That was like, you know, my generation's Dark Side of the Moon, my generation's Rumours. You know, it was the big statement album of our generation, and it's just a great album as well. So that in particular, when I was around 13 years old, 12, 13 years old, I got a copy of that, and I was just obsessed with music from that point. It wasn't until a few years later that my music teacher kind of really pushed me to play guitar. I don't really know why, but she was the first one that kind of put a guitar in my hands, showed me my first little licks and riffs, and, you know, this is a G chord, and then I just ran away with it, and I'm, you know, not looked back since. And but those were definitely my two moments that introduced me to music, and then I just fell down the rabbit hole.
How old were you when you actually picked up the guitar for the first time at school?
So I would have been 14. 14. I've been playing guitar for 14 years now. I'm 28, so it's almost half my life now. Well, no, it is half my life, isn't it? Yeah, great maths there. But yeah, it's been a long journey, and I was crap for ages. That's the one thing I want to make clear. Like I wasn't a natural talent on the guitar. It took me a lot of hard work and a lot of being rubbish for a very long time, and a lot of frustration, because there were way better people around me. There were way better guitarists and people just excelling, but I was still just as obsessed. I just wasn't good, but I just kept going and I kept going, and I just wanted to be good. So, you know, eventually things click into place.
Well, just when you mentioned that, and I'm glad you did, because I think people that listen to you now probably think you just picked up a guitar and it was like a God-given gift and you were away you went. And I think that's the problem. I mean, personally, I've bought a guitar at least twice in my life and never learned a chord because I just wanted to be brilliant straight away and didn't have the patience. So when you started playing it, you know, what guitarist was it that got you, that, you know, how did you learn? Actually, obviously you're a teacher, and then there's practice. Yeah. How was your process, and which guitarist in particular did you sort of look towards?
So beyond that teacher showing me my very first things, I'm largely self-taught. I had a couple of guitar lessons early on, but I never found it really inspired me to get better. I found learning guitar like a very insular thing where I sat on my own and I had to work it out myself, and I had to find what chords worked, and I moved my fingers to random places to find what sound that made, and then over time it kind of rationalizes in your own mind. And but the guitarist that I liked, Green Day again was very much a band that inspired me to want to play guitar and write songs and do that kind of thing. But I wouldn't say I looked up to Billy Joe Armstrong as a guitar hero. It was more that he was, you know, a songwriter and someone that wrote songs and had a guitar just by accident. I wanted to be Billy Joe. That was, you know, that's what I wanted to do when I started. Well, I think my first ever guitar hero, that, you know, the person I looked up to the most was probably Matt Heafy of Trivium. don't know if you know him, Trivium, big metal band. They were very big when I was in high school. Their first 3 albums were like, they were massive in the metal community. And I kind of really got into metal when I was in college. Not so much anymore. I'm not that big of a fan of metal anymore, but I was really into my metal back then. And Matt Heafy was the guy that kind of stood out to me because he was like really young when he was in Trivium, at the start of Trivium. He was like 16 when they did the first album. So that was really inspiring to me to like see someone have that kind of level of chops and songwriting ability so young, putting out major albums, and then or the work that was me on a personal level. So even this great guitar playing. But as it went on, I got into the classic guys. Brian May. Brian May's a big influence. Steve Lukather, Dave Gilmour. I was a big Iron Maiden for a long time. So Adrian Smith, Dave Murray. A lot of the classic guys, obviously. More recently, I'm more obsessed with Eric Johnson and John Gomm and people like that. Just people who are doing things a bit differently with the guitar. But yeah, it started off from very humble places.
So when you look at guitarists, are you looking for, because the names that you just given there aren't the ones that I normally hear and would expect to hear.
Yeah.
So is it more about, do you approach guitar work more in a technical way rather than anything else? Because do they technically have to be good guitar, or do they just have to be different?
I just think they have to have a voice. I don't really care if, someone like Dave Gilmour is a prime example, and he's often used as like the example against, someone like Steve Vai or Van Halen. You hear a lot of people say they'd rather hear Dave Gilmour play one note than hear Eddie Van Halen or Steve Vai or Joe Satriani or whoever play a million notes. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's the fact I'd rather hear someone who's honest about what they're playing and their intentions and what they're trying to say with a few notes than just putting a load of notes in for a reason. It's a weird one. I like guitarists who just have their own voice and have their own style and not necessarily the most technically proficient. I don't know. Like Brian May is a good one as well because he's unmistakably Brian May, but you would never say he's got the best chops in the world. Yeah. There's a lot of people who can play clean, more cleanly and faster and whatever, but there's no mistaking a Brian May solo. You just know it's Queen when you hear Brian May play guitar. Yeah. And guitarists like that appeal to me much more because I feel there's more talent involved in that than just learning an exercise and playing it over and over again really fast. I don't know about you, but yeah, that's kind of where I come from with guitarists.
With me, I think it's a bit like why I don't like diva singers, because when they take a song, and that whole song is an exercise and demonstrating how they can do runs and trills at the cost of the melody. And I think it's the same thing with guitarists for me. I mean, one of my favourite little bit of guitar pieces is Natalie Imbruglia, Tom. The little guitar right at the end gets me every time. It's just perfect.
It's great. Yeah, I agree with it. Yeah. I kind of agree with you on the diva thing. I'm a bit biased towards singers because obviously I'm a singer myself, so I do love singing and I appreciate someone who can do all the runs and all the crazy, stuff like that. I appreciate it because believe me, it's very hard to do. It takes a lot of training with your voice to get it to that kind of level. And I guess when you get to that level with your voice, you want to show it off. You've worked hard to make your voice do that, so you're going to want to show it off. And I understand, but I think the best singers are the ones that know how to place that within the motion of a song.
And it's the same with guitarists, mate, isn't it? It's the same with guitarists. I mean, I remember reading, I think I was in bands in the late 70s and all the way through the 80s as a singer. And I can't remember who it was at the time, but a guitarist said on TV, and Grey Whistle Tell the Tube or something, if there's a guitar solo and you can't whistle it or hum it, then it's not hitting the mark. And I was like, I remember I used to stand there because I was in a metal band at the time, like Iron Maiden style. And I'd be saying to these 20 guitarists, stop shredding everything, stop fucking put a bit of tune in there.
Exactly, but I think there are people that have a balance of both worlds. So Steve Lukather is probably that guy for me. He's got all the chops in the world, and but he's got all the taste of a well-seasoned songwriter and guitar player who understands where the guitar's in a song. So Steve Lukather for me he's my favorite guitar player. Like fundamentally, I'm a big Toto fan, but like he's the best example of a balance of both worlds, I think, because he never seems to overplay. Although you try and play a Steve Lukather solo, you will struggle. Like he's an incredible player. So like finding a balance is really hard, because when you do learn guitar as well and you learn those fast licks, you like it's cathartic to do, and you're like, yeah, I can play this, you know, I can play Crazy Train, you know, I can do a Randy Rhoads solo, and it's really satisfying to play those kind of parts, but it should never be at the expense of the song, like you say.
I mean, I remember what I've watched. You know, I should be shot for admitting this, but I watch all the talent shows on TV just for sheer shits and giggles. But I always wait, because I'm watching like the X Factor and the Voice, and the crowd sit there and they wait for the shrieky bit. They wait for the bit where they go, what? And they've ignored the rest of it. They're just sat there, and I'm like, that's great, but think about the the low bit. Do they have a low? Have they got a low range, or is it just a shrieky bit? And have they hooked you with the melody?
This is something you're hitting on, because what I find with singers is they're only impressed. Not singers, sorry. People who like listen to singers, they're only impressed with high notes when they listen to singers. Now, someone who has like a bass or a baritone range, who is a really low singer and hits a big note in the middle of where a tenor would sit, that's an incredibly different skill. It might be an easy note for a tenor to hit, but for a bass to hit a note in the tenor register is incredibly technical for them to get there with their diaphragm, and you know, someone like Frank Sinatra is a great example, who's just, you know, a really low crooner sort of voice, but some of the notes he'd hit and he'd hold for like 30 seconds. But then you get someone going, oh no, but it's not Whitney Houston though. It's like, it's the exact same level of skill. That's the exact same like benchmark that guy's reaching for.
And you're right, because I was at a gig and I had Matt Long stood beside me, because he was playing later on, and Matt Long obviously is from the band Catfish, and he's like voted Britain's best blues guitarist last year. He's got an amazing voice. Matt's amazing. But we were stood there and we were watching a band on stage called Autocracy, and I don't know, it's metal, but it's that one where they go, rah, rah. You know, so it's like, I know, but he was proper rocking out, and I was like, I'm surprised you like that, Matt. He went, mate, he says, it sounds amazing. He says, but I'll tell you right now, the skill that singer's got and being able to do that is off the scale. And that's the first time I thought about it, I stood and thought about it, he is right. That must be hard to do, and do it extended.
Exactly. So it's like, but there's like this idea that singers are only good if they have a big range or they can sing really high. Like, I'd be buggered if I couldn't sing high. Like, I'd never impress anyone live, but like, I'm just like, I'm lucky that, you know, my voice can go quite high. So when we play live, if I know I'm not winning the crowd over, I just belt a big high note and everyone's on my side. And it shouldn't be that way. You know what I mean? It shouldn't have to be that way.
You're the new Whitney Houston, mate.
Yeah. I'm the metal Whitney Houston.
So let's move back on to Twisted Illusion. Were you ever in any other bands before Twisted Illusion?
Oh, yeah, I was actually. So I've kind of been trying to set up the same band since I was like 17, 18 years old, and Twisted Illusion is eventually what it became. So I had a band called Raising Overtone, and it was some of the parts that are actually on Twisted Illusion albums were in these earlier songs with this earlier band, and I kind of reworked them and stuff. But yeah, I was always trying to make original music. Like, I always wanted to write songs. That was always my goal. Like, I always knew at the time, though, I wasn't quite there. I wasn't good enough at it. I was still like consuming lots of music and trying to find who I liked, what I liked about music, what kind of songs I liked. You know, when you're 17, 18, you don't know anything at all as much as you think you do. So very much trying to find my way. And I was in cover bands a lot. I had an Iron Maiden tribute for a couple of years. I was the Bruce. That was fun. And I kind of learned a lot from that about being a frontman and, you know, playing in smaller venues and commanding a crowd. And I really learned a lot about being the frontman by imitating Bruce Dickinson. So I kind of got my chops mostly through playing covers, genuinely. I didn't really kind of get on the original circuit until about, would have been about 2015. That's when we started gigging and we started supporting people. We went out with like Blaze Bailey and Absolver and all that lot, and played SOS Festival, and those guys helped us a lot in the beginning. And then we started touring on our own and playing here, there, and everywhere. But I largely started, like I say, by playing covers, and that's how I got my chops and learned how to play live and play with a band and play to different places and play biker gigs and work in men's clubs and pubs and play to all kinds of different audiences. And you really like kind of learn your craft. And I think that's what served me so well in setting Twisted Illusion up eventually, because I had all this groundwork before that.
Yeah, you didn't get straight into it. I think, to be honest with you, I think I started with covers, doing cover songs, and then we started introducing a couple of our own songs until I get to the stage where I just couldn't be bothered doing anybody else's songs. And when people at the time would come and say, do you do I Am Mate or do you do Bon Jovi? My answer was always no. And they would say, why not? I said, because they don't play our songs. So that was kind of mad. So when you first started to decide to have Twisted Illusion, did you have a vision of what it was going to be and your influences that created that vision? Well, did you?
Yeah, we did initially. Like initially, TI was like a very democratic band. It was 4 people, 2 guitarists, a bass player, and a drummer, and it was very much we wanted to be a prog rock band, and I've said this in interviews before. I kind of think that we painted our own coffin with that. We kind of just said that we were prog straight away because we wanted to stand out. Like around 2014, 2015, there were very few, at least in our city or around our music scene that we gig with, there were very few progressive rock acts. There weren't really bands that said they were that. So we saw that as a niche, as like a foothold, as like we can be the prog rock band, we can be the band that sounds a bit like Rush and Dream Theater, because no one's really doing that. So we kind of took that initiative to do that. And our early demos and stuff are very much like us trying to be, you know, a bit of a Dream Theater, a Rush, kind of classic rock almost hybrid. Because we all listened to, the problem is at the time we had that aim, but all the bands we were loving at the time were like Deep Purple and Zeppelin and all the classics. So we were really into like the classic rock bands at the time, and it was just a poor imitation of it at the start, and it took us a long time, I think, to really establish what we wanted to do, and that kind of eroded the democracy of it over time, because you know people want to go a certain way, and then if you're trying to have a vision that goes one way, you've got people dancing off in different directions with their own ideas. So it got very difficult very quickly because probably because of me.
That takes me to my next question, actually, because like every band, or like most bands, you go through personnel changes, and Twisted Illusion have done that.
Oh, yeah.
So for any young guys and girls that's watching this as musicians, and they think they're putting a band together, or they're currently in a band and it's not quite working, how do you decide when you've got the chemistry right, personality-wise and skills-wise, and how difficult is that?
Don't be afraid to cut dead wood. Don't if someone's not turning up to rehearsals, not putting their weight into things. Maybe it can be a variant of things. It can be them maybe not putting in money to things. If you're all like contributing monetarily, if you're all contributing to the songwriting, if you feel that that's the way your band's meant to operate, and you feel someone's not contributing to that, don't be afraid to cut dead wood quickly. There are hundreds, thousands of musicians out there in the UK. You will find people that want to be on your train. And I wish I'd have done that sooner with TI, because I kind of dragged along the lineup for a lot of the time where I was, writing everything, but I still had a band, and it was like, why am I writing everything? I want to collaborate with people. I want to be in a band and write songs like my favorite bands did together. And I've eventually found that, like the lineup I've had for the last 2 years, besides a bass player, we have bass player issues, but the core lineup I've had for the last 2 years is very much a writing partnership now. I don't write everything now. My other guitarist is a phenomenal writer, and he writes that. But you've got to be willing to kind of go through the process of, and the one thing I will say, I think this is a good point to bring up, is don't feel because you see people around you that maybe they're in bands with their friends. Don't be in bands with your friends if it's at the cost of your friendship. And you need to be able to be honest with your friends. And if your friends aren't cutting it, don't be afraid to go, I'm sorry, this is more important than, a friendship. We can still be friends, but, this is bigger than our friendship. And I think a lot of people start bands initially when they're younger with their friends, with the express intent of like trying to be professional, but you can't be that brutal with your friends. Whereas if you just get in a musician in who you're just trying to collaborate with, you can be brutally honest and go, this isn't working, I'm sorry, let's move on. And then there's no hard feelings, but you get emotionally invested with obviously people you really care about, and that can be difficult. So I would advise not to get in that situation. Don't assume being in a band with your friends will work out, because working with someone is not the same as being friends with them. So that's one piece of advice I'd definitely suggest, because I've been on the receiving end of that, and I've lost some good friends who I consider good friends, because egos just clash and it gets personal, because you know each other personally and you know how to push each other's buttons when you're under stress, and you know how to get to the core of something and go and stick the knife in. So try and collaborate with people outside of the group you exist in. Is definitely.
And if these people you find, they will end up being your friends, but
exactly
of the friendship based on a different basis. Sorry.
Exactly. So if the friendship is born out of a collaboration because there's a mutual respect, whereas you might not necessarily have that with your mate who you grew up with, is like you might bring one of the best songs you ever thought, and what if that best mate who you grown up with just thinks, oh, that's that guy I saw drunk the other week. You've not wrote a #1 hit, and he might dismiss some of your best ideas. And I've definitely had that, because they don't treat you the same way. So to definitely build friendships on the back of collaboration, I think is a much better way to approach it. I really wish there was there wasn't a lot of resources for advice for musicians when I started out, and I wish there was. Like there is now on YouTube, there is swaths of advice for out there. Like Damien Keys is a really good one. I like watching that lad. That lad, he's older than me, but I'm using him as an example that there's plenty of people out there who are willing to offer advice and guidance to bands, and they should take it, because every artist that is operating today has been through all the stuff you're thinking about right now and come out the other side. So as pig-headed as most of us can be between 18 and 21, just listen to the people that are a bit further on than you, because they've got there for a reason. I'm always willing to listen to other people. If someone more successful than me has got something to say about me, I'm all ears. I'm willing to listen to those people, because that's where I want to be. I want to be up there. So it's like, why would I not listen to that person? Be open to.
I think the thing is, Matt, you can always listen, and whatever they say, even if 10% of it strikes a chord with you, then that 10% is worth your time. And this is what this is about, mate, because there's lots of things out there, but I wanted to talk to you because of who you are and what you do, and I thought that was refreshing. And I think, and that's why people, I think, should watch these things. And I'm glad you're saying it. Can we move on to? Can you talk us through how because I always had it in my mind that you created everything for TI. I don't know, wrongly, obviously. But how do you talk? How do you go through the writing and recording process with TI as it stands?
So I'm the main guy. Without being self-adulating, I'm the visionary behind it. It's very much my project, but I have a core lineup of people. I have a great keyboard player, Andy Gauthier. I also have an incredible guitar player, one of the best guitar players I've ever worked with, and the loveliest person ever, Saxon Davids. He's amazing. And our drummer, Philip. We don't have a bass player at the moment officially. We have someone we work with who does the recordings and videos and stuff for promotional purposes. But it's changed over the years. Like I say, TI started out as a very kind of democratic band where I'd write with other people, they'd bring in an idea and a riff, and we'd write together. It was a very traditional start. We wanted to be that band where it was very much a democratic thing. But then basically I started doing more work than other people, taking on more responsibility, and it just became me being the only one that cared about moving TI forward. So I just got to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to do this on my own, and I'm just going to find people later. I'm not bothered. And I did one double album on my own, basically. I had a bass player and drummer, and I did everything myself, the vocals, all the guitars, and I co-produced it. And that was that. And that was the kind of the impetus that started how TI was going to operate from then on. And then since then, I've just kind of controlled the ship. But Saxon is a phenomenal songwriter. So I let him, I say let him, I encourage him very much to write songs because he always brings in incredible songs in. We're very much a writing team. So I trust him completely to write an entire TI song without me having really very much input, because I just trust his judgment so much as a songwriter. And that's taken me a long time to find that person. You know, I've had people in the band who brought ideas and they're just not good. And you've got to be honest about that. It's like, if I'm putting these songs out, they've got to be of a certain quality, at least in my mind. So I think I've found that in my band now, where I trust every member of the band to just bring their A game every time. And it's hard to find that. It's taken me, the best part of a decade to find this lineup. So here we are.
I think that's an important point to make as well. Like we talked before about, the importance of getting the right people around you, but it's also, you have to be patient.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember being in my first band. It was like, in them days, it was like I think that was about 1977, my first band, and two of the guys in the band were into AC/DC and Status Quo, and the other two of us were punks. So we used to split the set in half. So half it was rock, and the other half was punk. And we didn't have a bass player for the first 3 gigs, so we didn't know anybody in the bass. Oh, wow. But we just went for it. But the thing was that none of us had the patience to make it work. And we developed it later. And I think that's the other thing is that don't think that the song that you're writing now is it, and that's to be,
exactly. Patience is everything with us, and I've learned that the hard way, because I am a very impatient person at heart. But over time, what you just said about don't assume the song you're writing right now is the one, because I've written about 150, maybe 200 songs now, and it's there's always better songs down the line. Believe that. Like you will get better as a songwriter. Songwriting never kind of stagnates in terms of quality. You always understand songs better when you put them out, people respond to them, and why they respond to them. That gives you the best data you can ever hope for. And then when you go to another album, you've got all that feedback and what people think of something, and then that internalizes when you go to write your next song. And you're like, oh, people didn't respond to that song as much. Maybe it's because of this. And then you kind of start, rationalizing things in your head. And I have 100 billion% become a way better songwriter the further on I've got. I think my later songs are the best things I've ever wrote. And that's what everyone says, and that's where you should be as a songwriter. You shouldn't be like writing your first ever song thinking, right, I've just wrote Bohemian Rhapsody, because you've not. Let's take that as an example. Think of all the greatest bands ever. There are very, very few bands whose debut album is brilliant. Very few bands. Yeah. And if their debut album's brilliant, they've usually done stuff before you've not really heard about. There are, think about Queen. It took them, 4 or 5 albums to get to Night at the Opera. It took Rush 4 albums to get to 2112. Think of Led Zeppelin, the first album's all right, but it was, 3 and 4 where they really became, and even Houses of the Holy, where they became the great songwriters they are known as. Like it's a filtering process. You've got to go through this process of like, just get your things out, get gigging, learn as much as you can, and don't focus too much on one thing. Once it's out there, leave it, move on, get on to the next thing. I think I made my point with that, but yeah.
We move on now, because you and I have had a chat before, and you said something to me that I found quite interesting. Because, as you know, I work with a lot of bands, and they'll be telling me, oh, we're at rehearsal tonight, we're at rehearsal Tuesday night, we're at rehearsal, we had a rehearsal. So how does it work with TI as far as rehearsing? And then furthermore, what is it, when you look at gigs, how do you go about getting your gigs? What are you looking for in a gig?
Rehearsing, we don't rehearse, which is obviously a really weird thing to say. Most people will gasp at that and go, what? Because I just find it pointless. I really find rehearsing pointless. Like, if you can't play your own songs competently enough, that you can play them with a band, then you're not doing enough work at home. To me, practice happens at home. And then what we do, so like if we've got a gig coming up, we will do rehearsals, but we will do one rehearsal before a tour for 12 hours. And we will just iron out all the kinks, if there are any, which there usually are. My band are really tight. They come prepared. And that's what we do. We do the work at home. Everyone understands the song structures. And all the rehearsals are for is to engineer the set the right way. So maybe transitions between songs and things like that. I don't understand all this, practice your set list and all this. I love the spontaneity of playing live. I don't like we're doing this and then I'm saying this between this song and then this happens and then this happens. I love responding to audiences and changing things and doing things like that. So rehearsals they are ultimately pointless for a band like us. I wouldn't say that's the way every band should approach it, because if you've got a lot of moving parts in your band and maybe there's a lot of things that you kind of need to practice, like vocal harmonies and stuff, and maybe you've got a string player or something, maybe if you've got more of a complex arrangement it might work. But a 4-piece rock band does not need to rehearse every week. They just do not. You don't need to do that. You should be rough around the edges. You should have a live feel about you. It should feel new when you get on stage. It shouldn't feel like cut and paste, like we know what we're doing every second of this gig. That's just alien to me. I'm not on board with that. And you know what? When we've played live, we've had nothing but compliments about our tightness. So to me, that just shows that, the way I operate that with TI works. It's also kind of a function of the fact our band's spread out over the country as well. Our drummer lives down south, keyboard plays in Sheffield, Saxon's in Preston, and I'm in Salford. So we are spread out. But even if we were together, I don't think we'd rehearse really that much. We only do that, like I said, the really long rehearsal before we have a gig.
I think when I was in bands, we'd meet up, and it was more about writing new songs together, because that's how we worked. So the rehearsal would be, we might run through one song just to get to get warmed up, and then it was about writing new songs. And I think that's a difference between the bands that tend to go out every week or twice a week and just practice the same old set and the same old songs. And that's why I found it interesting. So when it comes to you, when it comes to deciding when to take a gig and where you're going to take a gig, what makes you say yes to something and no to something?
It's a different one because it changed over time. Like when we started, we just wanted to play everywhere. So we'd play everywhere in Manchester, in the Northwest, wherever we could to start. But once we started realizing that we had an audience in the Northwest, we started taking to putting our own shows on in Manchester, and we did our first one in 2016. I think it was the Ruby Lounge. Yeah, late 2016, we put on like our first big headline show. We sold 200 tickets, which you know how hard that is to do for an underground band. Like when you're starting out, that is not an easy number to get to. So we were really, really proud of that. And then as time went on, we would get festival opportunities offered to us and stuff. And festivals are usually a no-brainer. It's never a question of whether you'll do the festival, it's whether you get offered them. Any festival comes up, and if if you can do it, make sure you can do a festival, because that's where you will pick up fans. That's where you will grow your fan base. It's the best way to grow an audience is get on the festival circuit and be doing that kind of thing. But as for like touring and stuff, we just started doing everything ourselves in a very kind of DIY, independent way. I wasn't that interested about doing tour supports or doing someone else's idea of playing a gig, turning up and finding the nearest promoter. Wherever possible, we hired venues ourselves, controlled everything, the ticket fee, and largely you'll find that you'll make more money doing that. Also, or conversely, we'd find places that would give us a flat fee for playing. But anywhere where it was like a kind of promoter who would do a ticket deal or anything like that, where I felt, there's too much risk here, we usually shied away from it. Just try to always keep a control of things, basically. As long as we've got some sort of control over our gig, I'm not really bothered what the circumstances are. but for the most part, we'd rather hire a venue and then control the sale of it ourselves, and then the bar get the bar sales. That's the most straightforward way of doing it, that the band gets all the money they've earned, which is, by bringing ticket revenue. So then you really kind of get a good gauge of your value then monetarily. And so, like, if you can sell 100 tickets in that city at 6-7 quid a go or whatever, or maybe even a tenner, you can make a decent enough profit after all the costs you've made to facilitate touring. So that's very much what we kind of do when we tour. We make sure that the venues in each area kind of at least have that bit of profit, and then we'll use the Manchester show, which we know we're going to make money on, to help pay for the rest of the tour, basically. That's how we've done it in the past anyway. I don't know what we're going to do moving forward.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask, that was going to be my next question. I mean, as much as any as can, let's say COVID does eventually disappear halfway through this year. What have you got planned for TI for 2021 and 2022? So this could be obviously gigs are a different thing, but what we're talking about here is, recorded output. What are you doing?
Oh, lots, a lot. So how long have you got here? So this year I'm releasing all of the music I've been releasing. Sorry, I'll start again with that one. So this year I'm releasing all the music I've been working on for the last 3 or 4 years. We have, in that time, recorded 4 completely mixed and mastered studio albums. 3 of them are a trilogy, so it's Excite the Light Part 1, 2, and 3. They all link together. This is a big prog rock epic. I've sent you some of it. And we're also re-releasing our debut album this year in May, which we've re-recorded, completely revamped and done with our new producer. Our new producer is very much a big part of why we're re-recording things, because he's just brilliant to work with, and we wanted to kind of make our earlier albums better, so we've recorded them with him and we're re-releasing them. As well as that, we're also releasing a box set which will contain 12 CDs and 3 DVDs. We will also be releasing a separate compilation of that box set, which is all the albums I've been working on month to month. So it's like a fully produced version of the albums I've been releasing on Bandcamp each month. We're also going to be doing, we've got a lot of bootlegs and live albums stashed away that we're going to be remixing and stuff and making releases for. I've got plenty of ideas as well that I won't reveal for our YouTube channel for some fresh content. I'm also doing a podcast every week. All sorts of stuff, yeah, but it's going to be a very busy year for us. 2022, I'm hoping gigging's back. I can't see it this year personally. What I'm hoping is we get all our releases out this year and focus primarily on just getting music out and, via PR and marketing and all the right channels and doing things correctly. And then by the time we hit 2022, I'm hoping that gigging's a thing and we can go out to tour relentlessly to support these releases and just hit the road and shove these songs down people's throats.
I've never seen anybody as prolific as you are, or you guys are, in creating new music, and it's brilliant. It really is. When I see what you put out on social media, we're doing another album, I'm like, we're going to write an album a week, and I'm like, he'll do it as well. But the thing that I wonder about, and this is a really key thing, is that takes money. How do you finance it? And what have you found what's best? So any band that's watching this and thinks, I want to be like them, I want to do how do you finance it?
With great difficulty, but it's largely a product of working relentlessly. So the way I treat it, so in order to give bands who maybe want to go down the independent route a bit more, I know that there's a lot of bands that kind of want to chase, the old model of getting a record deal, and it's still a viable route, and more power to you if you can do that. But if you want to be an independent artist, you're going to be working 80 hours a week, and you need to start thinking of monetizing what you do. And I find a lot of artists don't like talking about money. They don't like talking about finances. They get really pissy about it. Tough shit. If you want to make money from this, you've got to talk about money. And I have no problems doing that. So how I do it with TI is largely with the records we've made in the last few years. We've done crowdfunds like via Kickstarter, Patreon. and what was the other one? Bloody Pledge Music. That obviously went down. We got a few in there before it all went to shit with them. We actually got our money, which we were lucky to do. But what the process was, so we'd basically do a crowdfund that would fund the studio time. So that was the primary point of the crowdfund. That would fund the studio time, going in with the studio and the producer and the mix engineer, and getting everything produced to a high quality. Now, in order to reward the people that supported that, we'd give them early physical copies. Now, to me, at that point, I don't consider that album released. That's just people getting it early who've adopted it early on our journey. Now, once I've got that album, I've shelved that, and that we'll worry about the release later, move on to the next thing. And then this same group of dedicated fans that I've built up over the years then fund the next thing. And we'll do a pre-order or a crowdfund, and then we do this. Now, the position I'm in at the moment is I've got four fully completely mastered, mixed, ready to go albums ready to unleash on the industry as a result of all these crowdfunds, but I don't consider them released yet. It's just that a few hundred people have copies of all these albums, which is great. So there's like a secret kind of, community almost of people that have got it. Patreon finances the kind of, I guess, the monthly expenditure, the website bills, the gear that I've got around me. All this gear has been paid for by Patreon, by the way. Patreon is just amazing. I'll talk more about that in a minute if you want. But then once we get to the official releases, it's just a case of paying for PR, some adverts, maybe a radio plugger, a Spotify plugger, someone like that. And we do that with merch sales because we have merch all the time. Merch is the lifeblood of everything. And, we get regular monthly sales, and every penny of that goes back into promoting the releases. So it's a case of knowing that you need monthly income, focusing the money where it needs to be focused, and not being afraid to be upfront with your audience saying, we need this much to do this. How can we get there? What can we give you? And facilitating it, and not being afraid to monetize things. Like the amount of times I'll see a pre-order with a band and I'm like, you could have made thousands more by doing this. You could have made hundreds more by doing this. Even things as little as like people charging for t-shirts at cost a lot of the time. Like they might make £1 profit on a t-shirt. I'm like, I wouldn't dream of ever trying to make £1 profit on a t-shirt. You know what I mean? It's not that you're ripping people off. It's that your fans are there to help you, and they understand that there is a monetary aspect of it. So be upfront about that, and just be aware that like your fans are there to help you get to the goals you're trying to set out for yourself. And I am nothing but thankful for the people that have supported TI, because the only reason I'm in the position I'm in is because they've invested in me, in my music, and what I'm trying to do. And now, because of that, next year I've got 4 albums ready to unleash that have been funded directly by the fans, not a label, not management, not nothing. It's been done directly from the fan base the way it should be. And it's not easy. It's a very month-to-month thing. I'm regularly checking my bank balance for the last pennies. But you know what I mean? I get to make music, and there's a lot of pressure behind it. Gigs definitely help because you can offset a lot of the cost by gigging. But like there's no one way to do it. So I kind of get, tongue twisted around my own way of operating, because it might seem a bit like sporadic to some people, or I couldn't do that. But it's like, how much more reliable is the job you've got now? Really ask yourself that. Like, that job that in that industry that might go under because of Brexit or the pandemic, is it really that more sustainable than working every day as a musician and trying to sell some music online? Is it really that more sustainable? So I just made that decision a couple of years ago and was like, nope, putting all my eggs in this basket. And now, I work every single day, and we sell merch every day really. We sell merch every day. And we're always doing monthly bootlegs is a big thing for us. Make sure you record all your gigs, have content, have archives. Your fans are interested in it. The amount of gigs where we've not been paid, but I've made a bootleg and then sold it later and made 500-600 quid. You know, imagine if we were getting 500-600 quid for that gig initially. That'd be great, wouldn't it?
I mean, you mentioned
it's just finding little ways to monetize every step.
Yeah, you mentioned Patreon, and it surprises me that so many musicians don't seem to either buy into it or get it. Can you talk specifically how you use it, your content? Because I know you said it earlier. You think it's the best thing to slice bread. So can you talk through that?
Right, so Patreon it was largely created as like a way for YouTubers to monetize their audience initially. A lot of the big YouTubers started using it because the ad revenue was just terrible, and they could go over to Patreon, get people to directly support a channel with small monthly donations. You're talking $1 a month, $2 a month, and in return they give early access to videos, shout out some of the videos, and all this kind of stuff. Now musicians have started taking to it, and why this isn't a standard for musicians, I will never know. Because what is the one thing musicians are always whinging about? They don't have stability. They don't have financial stability. Patreon gives you that straight away. Straight away. You can convince 10 of your fans to sign up, for $1 a month or $10 a month or whatever tiers you want to make. You can make different tiers and charge what you want and offer what you want for $10, offer what you want for $20. I'm saying it in dollars because it's an American company, and when I set it up, mine was dollars. But like, it's in the hands of the artist how they function it. Now, I use my Patreon as like a kind of exclusive extended fan club of TI. So I will post everything before it gets released is over on my Patreon. All the albums are over there digitally. Any demos I'm working on are over there. All the unreleased music videos next year that we've not released yet, they're all over there in a Dropbox file. I put up exclusive videos just specifically for my Patreon gang, and just behind the scenes things and little messages. I send Christmas cards this year to all my Patreons. Just little things you can do that are not that, they're not that costly to do, but can give your fans this extended experience of being a part of it. And, the Patreon's just been incredible for me this year. It's been thousands of pounds in income that I wouldn't have had, that has enabled me to buy music equipment, that's bought me a camera, that's, helped me pay my rent. It's invaluable. And if every musician kind of mobilizes and gets on board with this, it will benefit everyone, because it'll become a standard thing that people just use. And it's such small amounts of money. That's what makes it more ridiculous. If you've got 100 of your fans on there at, $10 a month, it's $500 a month from 100 fans. Think what you can do with that for your band. Think what you can do to operate your band.
It's basically an online version, and I'm old enough to remember fan clubs. So you used to pay X amount in a fan club, and then you get every month you get some photos, some written stuff. You might get back in the day a single or a cassette with some demos on it, and it's not a new thing. This is just much more instant and much easier to do.
That's how Massive Wagons treat theirs. Massive Wagons are honestly one of the best bands for this. That's how they've treated their Patreon, as like this old school kind of fan club, but in the digital age. And they film their rehearsals and stuff, and they've got this wall with all the Patreon faces. It's cool, and they're doing their own thing as well. And there's another band I follow, amazing band, the Lottery Winners. They took to Patreon this year and absolutely smashed.
I love them.
They're incredible. Their debut album, honestly. Tom's hilarious. He's a friend of mine, and he's genuinely one of the most funny, charismatic frontmen you'll ever come across. But all these bands are starting to slowly take to these things, these digital things, and I wish more bands would just put their sticks in the mud and just say, no, pay us. You don't get everything for free. We're only asking for small amounts of money. Chip this in every month. Have a direct debit with your favourite band. What's so bad about that? What's so bad about asking for that? What's so cringy? Why are people so embarrassed to ask for money? You know what I mean? No other industry does that. You literally...
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're preaching. I think I talk to my bands about it and get on it. You know what I mean? But I think it's a fear of the unknown, and I think that just sometimes it's that understanding. But it is, as I've said to them, it's just a way of treating your fans better and letting them invest in you, but actually get something out of it that others aren't getting.
You can start really small as well. Like we started off by doing we started off doing bootlegs in like 2018. We have he's become a very good friend of mine, but one of my fans who found us initially just started following us to gigs, and he started recording our shows. Like everywhere we went, he would record every gig we came to with his recorder, and then he'd go home and he mixed it, and he'd send me a bootleg of the gig. And now he's got an archive of about 50 gigs, I think, that we've still not used a lot of. And it was that little kind of impetus, and we just felt it out initially. We started selling bootlegs every month. We did like a monthly bootleg just to see what the interest was, and we sold I think we sold 15 of the first one. So it was not much, and we sold them at like 15 quid a pop, because it's like, this limited run of 15 discs, all signed, just this very limited thing, and it was exclusive and all this, and use that word exclusive. That puts the price up by a fiver if you say exclusive. But if you, it's little things like that, and then we went to do 20 copies and 25 copies, and now we do 25 copies of these bootlegs every time we do them, and they always sell out. And if we're doing one every month, 25 times 15, do the maths, the Patreon, Bandcamp, PRS royalties, there's another one. PRS bands, sign up to PRS. If you don't know what it is, I'll gladly talk about that, because the amount of bands that aren't signed up to PRS or PPL baffles my mind. It's incredibly enraging at times. It's like you're missing out on so much income, and you've got to have these multiple streams where you've got your merch sales, and you've got your gigs, and you've got this from this site, and this, and the Patreon, and this and this. And before you know it, you can pay everyone in the band a salary if you build it to a certain point. But I'm definitely not at that stage yet, which is why I kind of operate independently mostly, because
the thing is, Matt, I think that if there's anybody going to get to that stage because of what you're talking about, it's going to be you guys.
I appreciate that.
Because you see it not only as a creative thing, but you're actually very creative as a business, because it is a business.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It is. You are a small limited company as a band. That's what you should treat it as. You should treat it as have some sort of corporate structure if you need to, if only in your mind. You've got to treat it where there's monetary incentive to do things, and if it depends as well what your intentions are. If you just want to play gigs and have fun, that's cool, whatever. Do what you want to do. But if you're one of these people that's sitting there money on the internet going, bands don't get paid, and it's like, they do. You're just not one of them, and you're not using your head. Like,
it's your fault. And it's your own fault.
Exactly.
So
like if anything's ever going wrong with TI, I'm the first person I blame. No one else. I never look outwards and go, oh, if that person didn't do that. It's like, no, I probably shouldn't have said that status for the 98th time. I probably shouldn't have done this. Sorry. Oh, but it's always, I understand when I'm at fault with something, and more bands should do that, because they don't.
You have to be honest. People should expect honesty from who they're working with, but the hardest person to be honest with is yourself.
Yeah.
And when you look in the mirror, you have to be honest with yourself. And I think that's part of the constant evaluation you should be doing of your band, your music, etc. So you're very much a DIY. You've done it all yourself with the support of your fans, and you must have some of the most loyal fans out there. It amazes me just how much they buy into the concept. But here, I'm going to do the business thing to you now, which is if a record label come along to you, a biggie, or a huge big management company, could you ever be tempted? And by the way, I'm not pitching here because I'm not huge. But could you ever be tempted, and why would you be tempted, or why not?
Yeah, if they could offer me what I wanted, I would never go into it with starry eyes. I know how labels work. I know what the function of them is. I know what a distribution deal is versus what a 360 deal is. I know what things are that I don't want. I know what I want to retain. I don't want anyone to own my music but me. So if the deal was right, don't get me wrong. If a major label came along, absolutely I would consider it. I would sit down with them, I would talk with them, but I would negotiate hard, and I would not sign anything Because if someone genuinely wants you, they will compromise with you. But if they don't, you can see through that. If they don't want you and they're just kind of feeling you out, then you know they don't really want you. But if they really want you, they will compromise to what you want, because you're going to make someone a lot of money. The trade-off has just got to be that I can buy a house, my band can buy houses, and we're okay financially month to month. If that can be facilitated, yeah, I'd consider I consider a record deal any day of the week. But
and if the balance of power was equal.
Yeah, absolutely. It just depends. Like, I'd never say I'm against it. Like, why struggle if you can plug into that machine and it can benefit you? Yeah, of course, I'd love to, but I also don't need to. I would happily operate like this for the rest of my life and see a natural growth and things go the way they're going to go, and that's fine by me, because TI's only ever got growth from where it started. So we're in the best position we've ever been in, especially financially. So yeah, I don't see why I can't continue on the path I'm on now and see where that takes me. But yeah, I'm always open to stuff, and I'm open to talking to people. I'm always open to trying something different, but not at the expense of how I live or how I operate now. So yeah, if it took me to a better level, yes. I know too many bands that have got signed. I know too many personal friends that have been stung by labels. I'm quite close with people that have been on major labels and been stung by the process, and it's not a nice atmosphere. And then they've lost music that they've written, some blinding songs, and then they no longer have the monetary rights to them. So they're never going to share them again, because then it just sends money to a label. So why would they do that? So
I remember reading White Line Fever, Lemmy's autobiography, and he actually states in there at the time, which I think was about 2010, that he made more money for 4 songs he wrote for Ozzy than he ever did out of Motorhead, because of the way the record deals and the label management, the labels and the management he had.
That's crazy.
It's just mental. Okay, so the final question, and I'm asking you to look into the future. So just imagine it's that last few moments or the last few hours of your time on this mortal coil, and you're looking back at your musical legacy. What would success look like to you, Mark? What would be success to you?
I could honestly, without being too grim, I could die happy today. I consider myself successful. Like, when I was starting out in a band, success to me was always one fundamental thing, and it was paying my bills with music. That was it. Notoriety, popularity, fame, I couldn't give a toss. I don't care who knows me or who doesn't. If I can have a nice little house somewhere and pay my bills, that's all I'm happy with. And I did it by writing songs. I'll die a happy man. And that kind of lastly brings me on to one final point, is that within the music industry, people misunderstand that there is a giant gap between rich rock star, failed musician. Because if you're not that, people are seeing you this. And there is a vast swathe of people that are in the middle, that are just working musicians that are, earning 20 grand a year or, whatever. They're just doing well for themselves. Like, they're just paying your bills like you and I are, that paying the rent every month. It's that there is a lot of people doing that. And to me, that's success. If I can continue to do that, I already feel successful. I get to write music, share it with my fans, and that pays my rent. Why would I not be feeling content and successful at that?
I think actually, you know what? It's one of those things where it's so simple, what you've just said, but not many people get it. And you're right, because if you can earn a living enough to live on, doing something that you love doing, success doesn't come any bigger than that.
Exactly, and that's the way I feel. I don't feel a lot of bands they need to set out what success is to them straight away, because you get bands that kind of aimlessly go around and they'll play download and they'll do things like this, and they're like, why am I not? They don't kind of get this moment where they're like, I've arrived, because they don't rationalize what success looks like before they get there. Whereas if I played download, yeah, I'll be over the moon, of course I would, and I'd play the best show I'd ever played in my life. You can bet it. But I'll also be successful if I never get there. Like I'm not, I'm not chasing these things. If they come, great, but you're not going to stop my output. You're not going to stop me recording, and that's more important to me is the output and the discography and the legacy that I'm going to leave, which is all.
More power to you, because I think that's the kind of approach that everybody should have, really. And I think that's awesome, because in reality, if you ever got rich out of it, you're still that's a success. It's just a different success. But if you never have to work a day in your life other than doing music, to me that is the biggest success.
But see, even that point of success worries me, because that just presents a new set of problems. Because I already know what pressure I'd feel at that point, and the pressure is obviously you'd have a team around you, you'd have crew, and I'd get very attached to the people around me. And knowing that I may have a crew of 20 or 30 people relying on my output for a salary, that would feel like a lot of pressure to me. And like I'm not sure I could handle something of that scale, like where if I don't do this tour this month because that this crew doesn't go out and get this, and my guitar tech won't get a paycheck this month, and
it's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of people don't realize the pressure that like guys at that level have. So you saw them all come out, all the like Alter Bridge putting out crowd funds for their techies, and a lot of bands did it. Devin Townsend did it, and raising money for their crew, because they obviously feel that pressure and that guilt for the people that have worked for them for the last 20 years, helping their career behind the scenes, and then they've no longer got any income, but that artist is still okay because they're doing the live streams, and they've probably got a few quid put by because they're doing well. And that kind of pressure kind of like worries me, of like, someone else needing me for a salary, like that's there's a lot of pressure at that level, and unless
of course you're a heartless bastard that doesn't think about that, but that's definitely not that's obviously not you. It's obviously not you, mate.
I'd be worried about it too much.
Right, so I can only thank you, Matt, for the time you spent, and I'm 100% convinced that the stuff that you've said will make a lot, and should make a lot of people stop, reevaluate what they're doing, and if they take anything out of it and turn that into it, then this has been worth their while. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll definitely want you to come back on again, and we can talk about some other stuff, mate. So before we go, can you give us some of your links to your social media? We'll put the links down here when the show goes out, but if you could give us some of the links just now, buddy, that'd be brilliant.
Wicked, yeah. The main focus for us is a Twisted Illusion official fan page on Facebook. That's where like my main hub for putting out information. We're on Instagram and Twitter. We're quite active on those as well. I'm trying to build the YouTube up at the moment. Just started a podcast. Just put out an episode with Kim Jennett, and all sorts of cool stuff. What else do we have? And the Patreon, of course. If Patreon intrigued you, what I'd advise doing is genuinely follow a couple of artists that you like that are on there to kind of gauge how another band does it. I'd highly recommend following Massive Wagons, The Lottery Winners, or even myself, just to get an idea of, go on the lowest amount, see what it looks like, and kind of understand how Patreon can be the next best thing for musicians, because I really think a lot more musicians need to take to this site. That's all I will say.
Okay, mate. Well, you've been listening to Matt Jones from Twisted Illusion. This is the Scouser and the Scot. And until next time, you know what to do. Hit that cowbell and subscribe.